And then I had this thought that I need to find my best skill and then build my career on this and combine your best skill with your passion.
For this episode, I spoke with Dmitry Kopelyanskiy, an award-winning science communicator who primarily gives entertaining science talks on stage. We talk about tropical diseases, Dmitry's urge to infect his audience with the fever for science, and the importance of training your skills for career development. To tackle the global crises of the 21st century, regulators and the electorate need the best knowledge and understanding of the underlying issues. And it's the role of academia to provide evidence and expert opinions. This is why in this Science Advocacy podcast, we feature science communicators and discuss science topics that directly impact society as a whole. And because we also need academia to constantly improve itself, we also talk about research and publication practices, academia as a workplace, and science careers. When I interview my guests, we always talk about many more things than can make it into the final cut. But you can listen to the whole conversation by pledging any amount for a monthly donation on Patreon. We would greatly appreciate your support. If you'd like to support our work differently, you can also donate through PayPal or buy some merchandise. You'll find all the information on www.scienceforprogress.eu. Thanks to those who are already supporting us, it's very much appreciated. I'm your host, Dennis Eckmeyer, and this is episode 49 of Science for Societal Progress.
Hi, I'm Dmitry Kopelyanskiy. I'm a PhD candidate in immunology and infectious diseases in the University of Lausanne in my final year. And I'm also serving as a communication and events coordinator for Skills for Scientists. And on top of that, I'm also a science communicator. So I give talks, I moderate different events, I also serve as a panelist at a variety of science communication, public outreach events all over Europe, basically, in the last couple of years.
Dmitry's career has already been an interesting journey.
I'm originally from Russia, and I studied medicine there, and then I specialized in epidemiology. And during my final 2 years, I got really fascinated by tropical diseases. And as I usually say, it took me 2 years to realize there are not so many of them in Russia. Yeah, so later I went to Israel, the University of Jerusalem, for a sort of research project as a visiting scientist. And there I got really fascinated by molecular biology, by biomedical research. But as my background was different, I thought I should study this more. And then I went to Germany, to University of Bonn, where I did master in molecular biology and immunology, and later came to Switzerland to do a PhD in University of Lausanne. So at the moment, I'm working in the field of immunology and tropical diseases, and I'm investigating molecular mechanism of innate immune response to a certain tropical pathogen called Leishmania.
Dmitry had been a curator on our now closed rotating curation account on Twitter. My volunteer, Susanne Lehmburg, had gotten in contact with him as they both were organizers of Pint of Science in Switzerland, albeit in different cities. I then saw him again in a video of his performance at Science Slam, an event by Julia Offe. Quick disclaimer, I am currently working as a social media manager for scienceslam.de, but this episode is not sponsored. It's just one of the venues for me to look out for interesting science communicators. At that event, Dmitry talked about his research on the single-celled parasite Leishmania.
So Leishmania is a single-cell tropical parasite which is transmitted by a sandfly. And it's mainly the parasite that lives in tropical and subtropical regions in mainly developing countries such as Africa, Middle East, India, and South America. And there are many, so this parasite gets inside our cells and it multiplies there, and then there can be different types of pathologies, so depending on species, because there are many different species of the parasite, and also depending on the competence of immune system. And there can be relatively mild cutaneous forms of the disease when they're like ulcers on the skin, and usually it's self-healing. There can be more severe form when the parasites invade liver and spleen, and without treatment, this can be lethal. And what we work with is a case when the complication of the cutaneous form, when the parasites target mucosal tissues, usually on a face, so nasal septum, palate, lips, and there is a lot of inflammation in these areas. And so we work in the LIS lab in Lausanne, we work with a very special case when there is not just this one parasite, but there are actually two pathogens. So there is a virus that lives inside the parasite. So there's this kind of symbiotic relationship. There's an endosymbiont virus that lives inside the parasite. So there are two of them instead of one.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and that's the amazing thing about nature. So how two pathogens learn to live and work together to become a super pathogen in a way, because the Leishmania bears this virus inside. So our immune system responds to the virus in a very different pattern than it would respond to the parasite alone. And because of this response, there is a lot of inflammation going on, and actually the conditions that benefit the disease progression and benefit the parasite. So it actually exacerbates the disease. And that's basically what we study. We study how immune system responds to this, how basically these two pathogens, parasite with the virus inside, how they trick the immune system, and the immune system tries to respond, and without actually knowing what it's doing, it creates the conditions that favor the disease. Yeah. So for me, what I find actually fascinating about this is like, because for many generations, for thousands of years, we've been evolving, and we developed such a complicated and fascinating immune system to protect us against all these billions of pathogens around us. But those pathogens also want to live, and they adapted as well, and they learned how to cooperate and live in this symbiotic relationship to be resistant, to be stronger. And this is one of the things that I find absolutely fascinating in science, that the life finds the way.
You should watch the talk on YouTube. It is very entertaining, and it is one of the few talks in English on that particular channel. Find the link in the show notes. But what exactly is a Science Slam?
So Science Slam is a science communication competition, or a show, I would say. Probably it's more show than a competition, aimed to popularize science among general public. So the idea is that scientists explain their research to the general audience under 10 minutes, and you can use PowerPoint, you can sing a song, you can do whatever you want on stage, and it has to be understandable, so clear, and also entertaining, which I think is very important, because science is usually very boring if it's not your science. And that's why society in general is not very interested in that, because scientists, as scientists, we need everything to be factual. We need facts and figures and statistics, and it is never exciting, or it's never emotional, while people need to be entertained. I think one of the biggest ideas in science communication is that if you think what kind of people come to this kind of events, like public outreach events, public lectures, they're usually science enthusiasts, science lovers, or people from university, and it's cool, but they're not primarily the target audience, I would say. Because if we want to really popularize science among young generations, like inspire future generations of scientists, or promote science to the really lay audience, we should make it entertaining. Because if you think Friday evening, people gonna go out, and they can go to a theater, they can go to cinema, they can go to a restaurant, I don't know, circus maybe, or something, or to a pub. They're gonna have a good time there. So we in a way have to compete with them. So then we need to guarantee that they're gonna have a good time at the Science Slam, and they're also gonna learn something about science, something interesting, something useful, and they're gonna have a good time there. And many people may disagree with this, that science doesn't have to be funny, science is not funny, science is serious, and it's many years of hard work. It cannot be funny. Yes, it's many years of hard work, and it's tough, and there are a lot of days when you cry maybe instead of laughing. But in terms of explaining science to the general audience, you have to excite them, and you have to compete in a way with all other sorts of entertainment, and that's the way to transmit science to the general audience. And I think that's the strategy.
I actually think that there should be very different strategies, like a variety of strategies, and this is definitely one valid one. Of course, there are also people of the general public who think that science should be serious and you shouldn't be making fun of, and they go to other things, right? I think it's hard to say there's like one silver bullet to use a trope that you're not supposed to use for everything. So yeah, I think Science Slam is great. When did you decide to start giving talks like this?
I was always fascinated by some process in science, so that's also the reason why I'm doing PhD in this area, because I find it like, Jesus, this is so cool, this is amazing, and I have this kind of inner urge to tell people, like, look what I'm doing, it's so cool. And about 2 years ago, I decided to participate in a science communication competition called FameLab. I don't know if you heard about this.
Indeed, we have. In the very first episode of Science for Societal Progress, I talked with Ugo Bettencourt about his experience as a participant at FameLab. I put the link in the show notes.
It's an international science communication competition, probably the biggest and the best structured, and they look at the three parameters. So they called 3 C's: clarity, content, and charisma. I just saw in an email about this competition in my university, and I decided to give it a shot.
And it went pretty well at FameLab. Dmitry made it all the way to the international finals in the United Kingdom.
I never met so many people who are fascinated by science, the way I am fascinated. And we had a great time there. I also qualified to the final round there. It was a really amazing experience. And after that, I realized, okay, so I really enjoyed it. Like, I enjoy talking about science. I enjoy being on stage. And apparently, I'm not bad at this.
And this is when Dmitry decided to pursue science communication further.
I decided to work on my public speaking skills, and I joined Toastmasters International Organization. I don't know if you know what's that. It's basically when people of different professions, they gather together and they practice public speaking, and they coach each other, and then there are different systems how to get better, and then they develop not only public speaking but also leadership skills, because they coach each other and then they give feedback, and you actually learn a lot while being there. And in every city, I'm sure around the world, there is a group, at least one club. There's like a club system. So I joined the local club to learn more about this.
At this point, Dmitry decided to seriously consider science communication as a career opportunity.
And then I realized that, okay, this is the skill that I have. And then I started thinking about my future career after PhD, because I was already thinking that probably I will leave academia. So what can I do? And then I thought, I had this idea, like now we're probably thinking more about the career trajectories, but that you need to think strategically about your career. And then I had this thought that I need to find my best skill and then build my career on this, and combine your best skill with your passion. So if science is my passion, public speaking is probably the best skill I've got at the moment. So why not to use my best skill in my passion? So why not to give public talks about science, about what I love, what I'm fascinated about. And at the same time, you can always improve, get better, the sky's the ceiling. And along the way, develop other skills. And then I thought, okay, if you want to get better, you have to do something. You have to leave your comfort zones, because every time, if you go on stage, it's stress. No matter how experienced you are, but you're stressed. and you learn how to control stress, you learn how to prepare, and it's a good exercise. And also, I understood that, okay, if something that, I feel I'm not as good as I would like to be, there's only one way to get better is by doing it, by leaving your comfort zone.
So Dmitry signed up to a number of other on-stage science communication competitions, and he was overall fairly successful, confirming to him that
should be the skill that I will build around. And then, I also enjoy explaining things to people. I enjoy, seeing the excitement, when I tell them a story, how fascinated they are because they didn't know about this, and they like, whoa, really? And then they come to you after and they ask questions. And I think this is a successful presentation or successful science communication if the person Googles this after your explanation. So you give a spark, but then it's up to them to light the fire. I started getting invitations to speak at some events here and there, and I'm very close with the organizers of FameLab in Switzerland. So I help them every year. I moderate now the FameLab competitions.
That Dmitry would once succeed in public speaking was not at all clear from the beginning.
And I remember my first presentation during my master's in Germany was horrible. I was mumbling, I was sweating, I didn't know what I'm talking about. I was looking at my slides all the time, and the audience, my class could only see my back, and I was extremely nervous. And when I looked back at my classmates, they all had the same look, which was like a face palm like that. And the professor told me oh, I've seen worse, which literally meant that he had never seen worse. I felt so bad that day. I remember, I felt like I'm not capable of doing a public presentation in English, and It turned out totally opposite. Take on every opportunity, make a conscious decision. I want to improve, and then every time there is an opportunity to be on stage and give a talk, do it. And then you get better. And then, yes, of course, there's some structure, some knowledge, theoretical knowledge, how to make a presentation, how to structure, how to make an introduction, tell a story. It's all about storytelling, the twists and metaphors. There are different tools. If we're talking about science communication, there are different ways to convey a scientific message.
And now you can even book Dmitry as a speaker.
There was some time when I had quite a lot of events lined up, and then, why not to try to turn it into some sort of a small business or something. But I don't do it for the money, obviously, because I'm just doing it because I like to talk about science and explain science.
Of course, getting yourself out there is also great for networking with other science communicators.
The most amazing thing is the more talks or events I attend, the more amazing people I meet who SciComm enthusiasts, who organize events, and they do it in their free time. They volunteer for this just because they are also, fascinated by the idea of spreading the knowledge. And there are a lot of organizations like Pint of Science, where I was also involved heavily last year as an event manager. And there are other organizations such as 15 by 4 project. They organize these events free of charge for all the people who come. They provide free food, some entertainment if needed, and they really work with the speakers. They train them how to present. They check their presentations. And they have a really good team, advertising, taking pictures. They record every lecture, put it online on their YouTube channel. And if you live in Munich or nearby, go check them out. 15 by 4 knowledge. Really good guys doing a lot for science communication.
From our conversation, it was pretty clear that one of the drivers for Dmitry is skill development. So it makes sense that he's also communication and event coordinator for Skills for Scientists at the University of Lausanne in Switzerland.
So Skills for Scientists is the initiative that started in my department in University of Lausanne by Dr. Slavica Masina and Professor Joanna Joyce. They organized this platform for young researchers such as PhD students and postdocs to develop their skills, soft skills mainly, explore their career opportunities, to get some coaching, get some consultations, CV checks, etc., etc. So I joined them almost in the beginning as a PhD student, so giving a perspective of a PhD student, how I would benefit from this. And then I started helping organizing events. And actually, I really learned a lot there, also from organizing roundtables, career events, and workshops. So I, for example, wrote a small grant to get some money to invite coaches to teach science communication or project management or something else, for example. So it was a good experience for me in grant writing, in organizing events from A to Z. So, for example, we recently organized a project management workshop, and it was a good experience for me. And we organize also career events, often with alumni, because as you know, as a also scientist, ex-scientist, you know that when you are in academia, you are in a bubble, and you have no idea what's behind the wall. And you've been trained all your life, if you follow the straight line, like bachelor, master, PhD, postdoc, there's only one axis in career development. You don't know where your skills, where else your skills are needed, where else you can be useful, what are the opportunities. And many people realize that they'd like to try something else. They don't want to stay for whatever reasons in academia, but they don't know how to do it, where to look, how to write a CV, what is live in industry, how it works. And that's a big problem because every year there's so many PhD graduates, but positions in academia, they stay the same, maybe they even shrink. And nobody works with these people. And I think the universities should really take a better care. So this is what we do. So we invite people from the industry, researchers, for these roundtables when they can share their stories, their career paths, and then answer the questions from the PhD students or postdocs.
But they don't only want to give early career researchers a better outlook and some skills. They also try to change the academic culture at their department.
Sometimes it's too competitive and maybe hostile. And what we did, for example, we organized an annual retreat for our department. And we tried to put people from different labs together. So we put them in the groups. So then the people that would not interact with each other usually, now were sort of forced to be in the same group. So they were forced to meet each other, talk to each other. We want to facilitate discussion. So after each scientific presentation, so then each team was composed of a PI, several postdocs, PhD students, maybe master and technicians from different labs. And they had to score points. And there were two ways to score points. One way was to ask the questions to the speakers after each scientific presentations. And depending on your position, if you're a PI or a postdoc or a PhD student, your team would get a different number of points. So if the question is coming from the PI, it's half a point, from a postdoc 1 point, and from a PhD student 3 points, for example. And so we had the situations where technicians or master students were really listening carefully and then asking questions because they wanted to score points for their team and the things like that. And the feedback was amazing because, this kind of scientific conference, very kind of straightforward usually and serious, we turned it out into not a game, but something interactive, something, exciting where people, you give them a little bit of this competition, who can score more points by asking more questions. So then they had to listen carefully to the presentations to ask the questions. And then we also had a quiz with questions about the department, like how many nationalities we have, how many liters of biological waste does department produce per year, for example, and things like that. And then we were giving some estimates like from, 20 to 25 ton, for example, a year or something like this. And people also loved these questions because they were not obvious and they had to, we gave them these questions during the lunch break. So then they were having lunch all together and also working on this quiz. So we, in a way, forced them also to interact and, and then we did some other things because we also had a session of 3 minutes presentations, like explain my thesis in 3 minutes. And then we made an online vote for the best presentation. And then those people like who won, they got some small prizes. We changed the format from more narrowed scientific conference into more engaging and more relaxing and inclusive for researchers of all levels. And I think it's also a important thing to do.
And here's what Dmitry recommends as a career development strategy.
I recommend people doing science communication and participating in all these activities and projects, not only because they love science and because they want to communicate science, but also because they can learn a lot, learn by doing. So get experience organizing events, moderating events, giving talks, etc., etc. I think it's important to look at your skill set and look at your career perspective strategically, and then think, what do I need? What skills I lack right now? What I would like to improve? And then while you're still in academia, don't stay in the lab 24/7. Find some time to do some other things. It would also help your research, because doing all this FameLab and Science Lab helped me to see some gaps in my research also, and things which, people were asking me questions that I would never thought about. Like, wow, you learn how to see your project from another angle. Also, you learn how to, generalize and extract the key information, the key message, the key points from everything you do in your 4 or 5 years PhD. And why is this important? Like, make one sentence out of this. This is very difficult for many researchers, because you're doing so many things and you don't know how you can kick out a lot of information and sum it up only to one sentence. But this is what is I think is a very important skill. Even if you want to work in industry, I think many companies, they look for people who can see the important message and convey complicated science in one sentence, or like in a couple of sentences, but the key information, key message. And this is what I learned a lot. This, I think, is very important. So I would say to anybody who would like to do science communication, would like to try, do it, but don't just do it because you like it. Do it because you want to get some types of experience, and think strategically about what you're going to do after.
I completely agree. So clear thinking and being to the point is really important basically everywhere.
Another thing for scientists is they need to learn, we all as scientists need to learn how to explain not only our science, but general, science in simple words to general audience. Actually, I think that it's a duty of every researcher to spread the knowledge, okay? Because we need to fight ignorance altogether. There are so many people who believe that vaccines are bad, that the earth is flat, and, whatever many other things. And I just had I realized this once I was in a cab. And somehow I started talking with the driver, and then he told me that vaccines are very bad and he would never vaccinate his kids. And then I started arguing with him, and I realized, it was many years ago, and I realized that I don't know how to convince him. And I got so frustrated, and basically we were almost screaming at each other.
No.
But yeah, and luckily the ride ended safely. But my day was ruined. Probably his day was also ruined. Nobody convinced each other. And I realized that this is so wrong. And then I realized that, okay, I could have just not spoken to him, just, ignore his words and think, okay, I just traveling from, point A to point B, and I don't have to interact with this person, and I don't care about his opinion. But this is also wrong. This is wrong because, and then that's why I think every scientist should be able to speak to people like this, to people not like this, to people who have such opinions, but in a way that they can find the right arguments and control their emotions and find the right ways to convince them. And this is the duty also of researchers, because we should not run away from such conversations, and we should not fight, because the negative emotions would provoke only negative emotions. You would never convince anybody if you insult them or through scientific jargon at them or whatever. And scientists rarely get this kind of training, and I think this is very important.
Skill development is very important to Dmitry. After a really bad performance giving a talk as a master's student, Dmitry doubted his ability to become a good speaker. But years later, as a PhD student, he competed at FameLab with great success. He trained public speaking at a Toastmasters club, he learned the basics of science communication on stage, and he made a point out of signing up to every speaking opportunity he found, such as different science slams, Pint of Science, 15x4, different contests, and so on. And not only did this greatly improve his skills as a speaker, he was also able to connect to the many enthusiastic people on the scene, leading to further engagements with different projects as organizer and moderator. Now he has decided to think about his future career plans strategically. He feels that public speaking is currently his greatest skill, and science his greatest passion. Those are already two ingredients for a satisfying career. Do you agree with Dmitry that every scientist has the duty to become a defender of science in public? Send me your answers, questions, comments, or suggestions to info@scienceforprogress.eu or on social media @SciForProgress on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Direct messages are open. You will find the links, resources, and a summary of this episode in the show notes, alongside a link to the complete conversation that is already available to you if you're a member on Patreon. I thank you very much for listening. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot, Dennis, for having me here. And thanks a lot for your work for Science for Progress. And thanks to everybody who listened.